Welcome everybody, and welcome to Elevate My Life. I am Gilberto Caraballo, and I have with me good friend and mentor, John Walley. Welcome. How you doing today?
Great, great.
First of all, I just really wanted to thank you for being here and taking the time to do this interview with me. One of the questions I first wanted to ask you was, what made you decide to be a life coach? What drew you to this particular path in your life?
Wow, what a great question. It's been quite a journey actually that brought me there. I was introduced to life coaching actually through a family emergency that kind of came up. I had a son that was having a lot of problems and difficulties, and I guess a lot of people out there can relate or whatever, but with the influence we have in our societies with drugs and just low self-esteem and all the stuff that goes on with teens really in our society, we had to deal with a problem.
Right.
And that's really where it all started. And we got introduced to a program that used life coaching, that used business coaching. They found out that it just worked phenomenally with troubled teens. And joined the program and started looking at it and just fell in love with the process, because it wasn't, we learned we didn't have a broken child, we had a broken system. And that it wasn't him, it was the system. And we're part of that system. I love the approach, because it wasn't this an emotional tie and this reaction and all that sort of stuff. It was more about who we're designed to be, and letting our strengths be our strengths, and capitalizing on those things and communicating from a place of knowing that our child is our child and he makes the choices that he makes, and there's consequences for that. And we don't have to react to that. We don't have to own that as parents necessarily. Not that we don't have a role in their upbringing, but there's some things we just can't own.
Right.
And I fell in love with the approach. So throughout the training, it started with little things, just baby steps, to start believing in ourselves and get rid of that language in our head that we're not good enough or we're not smart enough or those kind of things. But then we started with these exercises towards the end, and we started to graduate this, where we'd have to just go out into a foreign town. I remember we were in Chicago one time, and they were like, great, so your final exercise is to go out and find 200 strangers to support you in celebrating life. And we're thinking, great, we're going to go to a bar, we're going to go to this. And they're like, oh, and by the way, no places with alcohol, no bars, no. So we're like, great, how are we going to do this? But the amazing thing is we did it, and we started learning there's so much more we can create in life. It's not about chasing a dollar or getting a paycheck. Not that we don't need that. Money makes the world go round, sort of, but it doesn't have to be our driver, our purpose in life or whatever. So the whole process was originally dealing with, how do I deal with this kid, and we had 3 other children that were like, look, they're great. Why is this one? And it was all about this blame game, to learning to embrace who he was and let him be who he was. And he's really special in our lives today. He's not the problem. He's this amazing, he definitely goes his own way, but we see him in a different light now. And we embrace that piece of us, and the awareness around, it's probably the piece of us that we most embrace, that we stay away from. My wife and I are we're very adventurous. And so he took that from us. But as parents, a very adventurous child.
Right.
It's a scary thing.
Right.
And so I just fell in love with this non-reaction, this process, what I like to call the coach's approach to life, to things in general. And I was like, I gotta do this. I gotta do this one day. And at the time I owned a business in IT and doing security stuff. I was like, if I ever sell my business, if I ever do anything else, I'm gonna do this. And people looked at me like I was crazy. So back in 2009, I had the opportunity. I walked away from my security practice, my IT practice, sold it, and said, okay, it's time. It's time to go out there and follow my dream. And so now that's what I do. I coach, and it's the best thing in the world. Like, just watching people's lives change and them start embracing that. We're a system. It's not about blaming myself or about me being broken or somebody else being broken, but it's about us connecting as individuals. So
Excellent.
Anyway, long story, but that's kind of how I got into it. It was completely on accident, I guess you would say. I was just seeking an answer.
Funny how those things work out,
Mm-hmm.
What kind of changes did you see in your life after you started learning coaching and learning this different way of looking at life?
Oh wow. I think the first thing, like I said, is we learned that we're really messed up. um, I say that kind of laughing, but one of the first things I learned in coaching was that there's a lot of judgment. I had a lot of judgment for the world. I had a lot of judgment against myself. And I learned that we as humans, we don't keep our word about anything. We don't value our word very much. And I think that was my first awareness when I got into coaching. It's like, oh my God, I lie to my children every day. You know, I lie to my wife every day. And it was simple things like when my daughter would come up and say, you know, Daddy, can we get ice cream? You know, you come in and it's not evil intentions, and I'm like, yeah, and you think this wonderful thing of having ice cream with your daughter, but later never comes, and you know, we feel like that's okay because the consequences aren't there, but it's not. It tears our families apart. And I think that was the first piece, and I guess because part of the coaching I went to originally was around family, it wasn't just business. I think the first thing that I really learned, the first thing that I took away from coaching is just to be impeccable in my word. You don't break your word.
Right.
And the rewards for that, I can't even begin to explain. The things that started happening in my life, and when I started communicating from a place of I don't break my word, and it's not about the consequences. I think the first time I told a client that was scared to death that, you know, a whole project was going to fall through, that no, I promised. I told my wife I was going to be home at 6:30 for dinner. Sorry, I can't help you. I thought I was going to be fired the next day, and actually the opposite happened. You know, there was this respect all of a sudden. I could see them identifying, where almost like a longing. I wish I could do that.
Right.
And it created the opposite result of what all my fears were. So that was probably my first real thing with coaching, is just to learn to be impeccable with my word, that my word means something. And it's worth more than all the money in the world. I mean, one of the ways that we did this in some of the beginning training that I went through is like, you know, if your wife had that $3 million check on the table, if you're at dinner at home at 6:30, you'd be there. You'd be there. And it's true, because I wouldn't care if I lost my job or not. So that means that money's more important than our word in the society today. It was for me at the time. And it's like, you know, how can money be more important than my wife, be more important than my children, more important than my word? Who cares what's on the other side? Right. How can money be more important?
Right.
And so that was really my first lesson. But we're always learning. I haven't arrived. I haven't got there. So it's this continuous journey. And
it's kind of the beauty of it, actually.
Absolutely. So now it's every day. It's from how to become a better father, how to become a better leader, how to become a more compassionate person, more giving. So it's, and I find the more I give, the more I learn. So it's, we go through phases and we learn. And that's part of the beauty of life. And I think I've learned to do that, to sit back in that and enjoy the moment. And a really wise teacher that I had at one time says that we're human beings, we're not human doings. And so that means that we should learn to just be. And I think there's great wisdom in that.
Yes. Yes, I like that. I got to write that down. That's awesome. There seems to be a lot of people, you know, oh, life coaching, you know, they think it's counseling. If you could kind of, you know, shed some light on that in terms of how life coaching is different from counseling, and maybe some of the advantages of life coaching over counseling. If you could go into a little bit into that, that'd be awesome.
They're very different. It's sometimes it can feel the same. It really can. It's the coaching approach is much like what we've seen in athletics forever. Coaching's about